Hello, ladies, and welcome to another episode of the Autoimmune Rehab Podcast, where, as always, you can listen to all previous episodes and check out show notes and resources in more details online at autoimmunerehab.com. Today's episode is sponsored by my 30-day self-care journal template that you can download for free by going to the link in the description or going to annalaurabrown.com/self-care. Now let's get started with today's topic of talking about intermittent fasting. Now, intermittent fasting is something that is not new, but it is also something that has risen to popularity as a good way for a lot of health things, especially a lot of people are ranting and raving about it when it comes to losing weight. And this is something that I have started doing myself and have been doing for about 2 years now. And so I thought I would share a little bit of information with you about how I do it as somebody who has Hashimoto's, autoimmune, thyroid issues, things like that, because intermittent fasting, when you have an autoimmune disorder, is different than when you don't have one. And there are certain forms of intermittent fasting that you really don't want to do when you have an autoimmune condition. So let's get started talking about some tips about how you can do intermittent fasting. I'll share with you my experiences with intermittent fasting, what my results have been, how I've accomplished doing it, how I do it with Hashimoto's, and some other resources and much more, all about the topic of intermittent fasting following what is considered to be a 14-10 model, and I'll explain what that is. So let's start off to begin with by explaining what intermittent fasting is to begin with. So intermittent fasting is the concept of having a certain window of time during your day and night, rather, when you don't eat any food and all you do is drink water for the most part. Now, some people will include drinking some kind of like black coffee or tea as part of that, especially if they're going to do a really extended intermittent fasting. Personally, for me, I only drink water, and then I have some supplements and things that I take at night for bed that I take as well during that time frame. But other than that, I don't eat or drink or consume anything else. And so what exactly then is the 14-10 intermittent fasting method that we are referring to? So the 14-10 intermittent fasting method refers to the concept of having 14 hours each day and evening in which you do not eat or drink anything other than water, and 10 hours is your time frame for eating your food. And there are different ways of doing this. There are different time frames that you can do it. Personally, for me, 90% of the time, I shoot for my 14-hour window being from 6 p.m. to 8 a.m. each day. So I only eat food between 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. There are other methods where you could always do it, like where you could do like a 16-8 even, and that one's become pretty popular with people. So you would only eat between 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. And then, the rest of the day you wouldn't do it. Some people in really extreme situations will do like an 18-6, so they would only eat between noon and 6 p.m. And there are a lot of reasons why I've chosen the 14-10 method of intermittent fasting. And the biggest thing with the 14-10 is it obviously has a smaller, a larger rather window of which you can eat food, and a smaller window of time frame in which you're engaging in the intermittent fasting. And personally, from a lot of the research that I've done, some of the people that I've talked to, my own experiences as well, have discovered that if you have thyroid issues or autoimmune issues, then you really want to be careful about doing anything other than the 14-10. Now, if you have a large amount of weight to lose, you may want to consider doing something like a 16-8, but I definitely would not recommend doing an 18-6 when you have thyroid issues or autoimmune issues, just because you're going to have a hard time sticking to that without getting sick. The other thing you also have to take into account is if you have any kind of blood sugar issues or diabetes issues or pre-diabetes, then sticking with a 14-10 is probably going to be the max you can do, and you may even need to do something more like a 12-12, where you would have 12-hour time frame of eating food and a 12-hour time frame of when you don't eat. And there are a lot of reasons why intermittent fasting, and especially doing something like a 14-10 method, is popular and why it really works. So for me personally, the biggest benefit I've noticed is that I don't do all the snacking and things at night that I used to do. So previously, when I didn't have a hard stop of eating food at 6 p.m., I would start, I'd finish my dinner and then an hour or two later, I'd be eating chocolate or chips or cookies, crackers, other things that would consume a lot more calories and things like that. And over time, I feel like that is one of the reasons why I initially became pretty heavily overweight. And so, I don't do that when I'm intermittent fasting because I'm sticking to myself and saying, okay, nope, at 6 p.m., I'm done. I can't have any more food. My fasting period has started. And I have found that I am less hungry, and I initially also did lose quite a bit of weight doing it. The amount of weight I've lost now has slowed down, but I feel like I balanced my blood sugars. The last time I went to the doctor, I had numbers that were really amazing, especially for somebody with Hashimoto's in all areas. So not just with my blood sugar levels and metabolism, but I had really good numbers with cholesterol and all kinds of different things. In fact, my doctor was saying she was really jealous of my lab numbers. And so I feel like this intermittent fasting has really helped me. And one of the main reasons I might also want to add that you don't want to do anything more than a 14-10 most of the time if you have thyroid or autoimmune issues is, for one thing, it will mess with your medication schedule if you're taking a medication. Also, will mess with your ability to take any supplements that you may need for your thyroid. And a lot of us with thyroid and autoimmune issues also have some blood sugar issues and things that need regulation, even if we don't actually have diabetes or prediabetes. And so it's just really hard on our body and just not good for us to go too long fasting. In fact, I know that I'll even get to the point of almost getting dizzy if I try to go more than maybe 15 hours I might be able to go. But that's just how it is. And they say that there's also been a lot of study and research saying that everybody really should have at least a 12-hour window of time each day in which you do not eat food and you fast. So, that's kind of the minimum you want to do. And 14 just expands that a little bit to help improve your metabolism and your blood sugar, that kind of thing. I also have noticed that I have less pain and I also sleep better too, because back in the day when I used to be just munching on all kinds of things until 8 or 9 at night, I didn't sleep as well because I had digestive issues and my stomach was still trying to process the food that I'd eaten an hour before I went to bed. And so that's another aspect of this that people don't think about, is that when you go to bed at night, it can impact your sleep if you have eaten anything within 2 hours of going to bed. And so for some people, it's even 3 or 4 hours. So you really want to finish your food intake in enough time before you go to bed that your digestive system has had a chance to process all that food. So that's another benefit to it. And then I also noticed when I wake up in the morning, typically I get up around 5 a.m. in the morning, especially during the week. So I know that's really early for a lot of people, but that's just what works for me. I have enough time to get my exercise done, do any inspirational or scripture reading, sometimes take the dog on a walk, do all kinds of other things in the morning before I start working at 7 a.m. And then I typically do eat my breakfast between about 8 or 8:30 a.m. So I'll start working for a little bit. Fortunately, I work from home at the moment, so that works really well for me. Back in the day when I was working in an office, it was a little bit tougher to stick to that, but a lot of times I would just still bring my breakfast with me. I would do things like overnight oats and would just bring that with me, bring some fruit, nuts with me in my lunchbox along with my lunch. And then I would also bring, like sometimes I have a couple different methods of cooking eggs really instantly in a microwave. So I would just put the eggs in the dish in the container and bring it, or even bring, leftover dinner and eat that for breakfast or whatever, so that I would have it there with me at the office and could start eating my breakfast about an hour to an hour and a half after I started working. So that's just, what works for me. And I have noticed that by waiting a little bit in the morning and not just popping out of bed and trying to go eat breakfast, that it gives me more time for my medication and supplements to settle. I'm able to exercise, and I feel like it just is better for me. Even if, like I said, I initially lost about 30 pounds when I started doing it, but the weight loss has slowed a little bit. But, I'm feeling the benefits far and above beyond that of just weight loss. So there are a lot of things that are specific to the 14-10 intermittent fasting that are scientifically proven to happen. So they say that a lot of the common things that people experience, like weight management and fat loss, I already mentioned that. but also it teaches you to exercise self-control and to eat less, can also improve your metabolic health, can also even give you improved mental clarity and focus. Now, this is also a benefit of intermittent fasting that I hadn't really considered, but when I really think about it, I do feel like that actually is something that has happened to me, and potential benefits of longevity and just a lot of things. It's just really, really good for your body for you to do that. And so, how exactly do you get started with the intermittent fasting, especially if you want to try the 14-10? And maybe you're somebody like I used to be, where you didn't really worry about what time it was when you finished dinner. Sometimes maybe it was 8 or 9. Then maybe you'd have other snacks and things before to bed. You'd wake up in the morning, feel like you were hungry and wanted to gobble down food immediately. So, how do you get into this habit of doing this 14-10 intermittent fasting? Well, the first thing that I think you want to do is have a really big why and a really good goal and really understand how it's going to benefit you health wise to do it. I know I was really motivated by getting rid of some of my excess weight and just trying to avoid becoming pre-diabetic, because my dad has had diabetes ever since he was about my age in his 40s. And so it's definitely a really high risk for me. And so I think that, and I would say ease into it. So depending on what kind of habits you have currently, the first habit you may want to work on is the habit of stopping to eat by no later than about 6 or 7 p.m. at night. And then if you're still getting up in the morning and eating earlier, then that's fine. And just work on that for about a week or so, and then ease into waiting to eat breakfast until a little bit later in the day. And once you get into the habit, it's really easy to do. I have noticed that, if I do get thrown off because, say, I'm at a party or a dinner, or, I'm eating food on somebody else's schedule and maybe I don't finish before 7 or 8 p.m., then I can get easily thrown off by it. And then, I usually try to counterbalance that by not eating breakfast till, 9 or 10 the next morning. But sometimes that can be hard to do because I'll get hungry or that kind of thing. So you just want to try to stick to a schedule, try to do it as much as you can. And I think that the rest will potentially fall into place. And like I said, some of the biggest challenge with it can be, on nights where maybe you're traveling or you're attending dinner with somebody else and you're not the one doing the cooking, or, you're just outside of your normal schedule. It can be a little bit trickier, but really, that's really the only thing that I can think of. And, there's as for some people, I have also noticed that if you implement the intermittent fasting, even if you maybe don't even make a lot of other major dietary changes, you can find that it will still help you improve your metabolism and your weight loss and that kind of thing. So, as far as who really shouldn't do it, honestly, if you have diabetes and are on medication, you may want to ask your doctor about it. Other than that, if you're not diabetic, I would say anybody and everybody can try it. And there's no harm in trying it for a couple of weeks and just seeing how it goes. And so if you have experience with intermittent fasting, if you've done the 14-10 method or maybe another method of intermittent fasting, you found that it's really worked well for you, I would love it if you'd reach out, share your story with me. And if you have any other questions about intermittent fasting, then I would love to hear about those from you. I will add that the other thing you can also consider trying is that there are some different apps out there for intermittent fasting. Personally, the only ones I found that seemed like they were any good required you to actually pay for them. And it's just not something that I wanted to personally pay for. So I haven't used any of those apps, but that could be another suggestion, especially if you're really struggling, would be to research what kind of apps you can find on intermittent fasting. And yeah, that's about it. So all I can say is I really highly recommend it. It's really helps me feel better. Like I said, I initially lost weight, all kinds of things. And if you have any other questions or would like to share your story, feel free to reach out and let me know. In the meantime, I invite you to subscribe to this podcast, rate and review. That will really help it get out to a lot more people. And stay tuned, because there will be some other really amazing interviews and episodes on different topics coming up. Take care and have a great rest of your day.